All right, hello. Today we're going to read the Early Christian Heresies by Joan O'Grady. I finished St. Tikhon's book, and I want to jump back to the beginning of Christianity, the first century. St. Tikhon was in the 1700s, which was about 300 years ago. I have multiple books lined up. I'm gonna try to jump back and forth in time and try to show the continuity of the church's teachings and beliefs from the beginning, and how it's a continuous it's all connected physically as well as spiritually in teachings. So here we go. Chapter 1, the beginnings and the first divergences. As recorded in the Acts of the Apostles, written in 80 AD, the disciples were called Christians first in Antioch. That was a quote. Quote, one of the weaknesses found in religious histories is that all the adherents of a religion are assumed to be on the same level of understanding. This is particularly apparent in the history of the early Christian church, end quote. Quote, the first Christians were, of course, Jews, and they continued their worship in the temple, their reading of Jewish scriptures, and their obedience to Jewish law. At the same time, they followed Jesus as their master, but soon there was a division. See the book of Acts. Quote, there were divisions and uncertainties even among the apostles themselves, end quote. See the book of Acts, the Galatians, and the other epistles. They talk about all that. There were Jews that, though called Christians, still stuck strictly to the Jewish practices. They believed that Jesus Christ was the greatest of the prophets and was considered the expected Messiah, but they believed he was just a man like other men. They became out of favor, especially after the fall of Jerusalem in 70 AD. From them developed a sect called Ebionites that still existed in the 4th century. They believed that St. Paul was a heathen because he taught Jesus Christ was the Son of God. They only accepted the Gospel of Matthew. Variations of belief existed among them. Some of them believed the Spirit of Christ was bestowed on Jesus at his baptism, but that it left him when he was crucified because he died like an ordinary man. I want to clarify in case it's not clear. We're talking about different heresies and different sects. So these are not the mainstream. The apostles passed on their teachings and authority of the church by the laying on of hands and saying prayers and electing bishops and priests, and they were the authorities of the church. These are different sects that just rose up and started teaching their own form of Christianity, not necessarily all agreeing directly with the apostles. Of course, there were, like she said, there were some disagreements among the apostles themselves, but they worked themselves out in time. Okay, back to the book. Some took things to the opposite extreme and believed that if Jesus was the Son of God, then he couldn't really be a man. Some scholars try to contend that Jesus Christ was not worshipped as God until far into the 2nd century, but this is proven false by Didache, which is considered to be written before 90 AD. Also, a Roman historian of the period says that Christians of the 1st century were singing hymns to Jesus Christ as God. Others of the period believed Jesus Christ only appeared to be a man, but was really a phantom or spirit and not a man. This heresy came to be called Docetism. It is not just one heresy. It's found in multiple heresies that believe Jesus Christ is a mythological or symbolic of mankind's relationship with divinity. Some say that St. John's epistles warned about these beliefs. See 2 John 7. There were also many skeptical people of that period and since that believed Jesus Christ was a giant hoax perpetrated on superstitious peasants and simple-minded people. For skeptics, Jesus Christ was a made-up story, an impostor, or the hoax of ignorant fishermen. St. Paul's letters are the earliest written records of Christianity that we have. They're estimated to be written between 50 AD up to the time of St. Paul's death, which was about 64 AD. The exact dates for 3 of the Gospels are not known, but St. John's Gospel is believed to be written near the close of the 1st century. After the death of St. Paul, many abandoned his teaching, but by the 2nd century, the writings of St. Paul were accepted as authoritative apostolic teaching by the Church. Even though St. Paul did not write specifically about the life of Jesus Christ, it can be assumed that he probably believed everyone concerned knew of it through oral teachings and tradition that were written down by the saints in the four Gospels. Not to mention oral tradition. The four Gospels and St. Paul's letters were generally accepted by the church in the second century. There were, however, many other writings considered edifying by the church from the same period. Quote, Shepherd of Hermas, the Didache, letters of Barnabas, end quote. There were also the treasured letters of St. Ignatius and St. Polycarp. And though these were accepted as profitable for private reading, they were gradually eliminated from use in the public church services and liturgy. There are also other records of life of Jesus besides the four Gospels, even mentioned in Luke 1:1. Some of these are called apocryphal Gospels. In other words, apocryphal means hidden or secret or legendary. And they're called that because the authors' identities were unknown or uncertain. The Gospel writers are not trying to write a historical biography, but rather it was the beginnings of Christianity. They did not describe exactly how it happened in detail. The first Christians had different understandings and interpretations of events, and these things had to gradually be sorted out, and because a lot of it was through oral tradition and letters and people telling each other what happened. There were always problems, controversies, and it took some time for the mainstream Orthodox Christianity to clearly define. And that concludes chapter 1. I already have chapter 2 done as well, and I'm going to go ahead and read that in a separate video. But basically, I'm trying to outline the history of the church in a crude manner, kind of jumping back and forth in time until I kind of fill in all the gaps. I'd like to do every century, a book or writings from each century. So there's quite a few from the first century that I'll have to get from different books I have in my library. But I thought this was a good overview of the first part of the church and what Orthodox Christians don't believe and what they did believe. So that concludes this one. Please pray for me, a sinner. God bless. Over and out.